It was a chilly autumn evening when Jack Thornton took on the night shift as a security guard at the long-abandoned Hawthorne Manor. The grandiose Victorian structure had seen better days, now standing as a decaying monument to forgotten times. As the clock struck midnight, Jack settled into his creaky chair, the only companion in the vast emptiness of the manor. The wind whispered through the gnarled branches outside, casting eerie shadows on the cracked windows. Jack tried to shake off the uneasy feeling that crept up his spine as he gazed into the darkness beyond the glass. He had heard rumors among the locals about the manor being haunted, but dismissive of such superstitions. He took solace in the thought that his paycheck outweighed any spectral encounter. As the night wore on, the old building groaned and sighed with every gust of wind. Jack's flashlight flickered, casting dancing shadows on the peeling wallpaper. His radio crackled to life with the occasional static, amplifying the sense of isolation that permeated the manor. Jack dismissed it as the result of outdated equipment, but the unease lingered. Around 2, Jack noticed a peculiar draft. Despite the weather outside, a cold breeze seemed to circulate within the manor. He tightened his jacket, dismissing the chill as just another quirk of the aging building. But the air felt dense, charged with an unspoken tension that even the darkness seemed to acknowledge. Flickering lights in the corridor played tricks on his imagination. He caught glimpses of fleeting shadows, indistinct figures that vanished as soon as his flashlight pierced the darkness. Jack attributed these sightings to exhaustion and an overactive mind, chalking it up to the late hour and the eerie atmosphere of the abandoned mansion. However, his skepticism waned when he heard the distant sound of footsteps echoing through the empty halls. His hand instinctively grasped the radio on his belt as he scanned the shadows, his heartbeat drowning out the rhythmic tap of rain against the windows. "Hello," he called out, the words swallowed by the vastness of the manor. No response came, but the footsteps persisted, growing louder and closer. Jack hesitated before venturing into the labyrinthine corridors, guided solely by the dim beam of his flashlight. The footsteps led him deeper into the manor, where the air became thicker, suffused with a palpable sense of dread. As he turned a corner, he found himself in front of a grand ballroom, its ornate chandeliers swaying gently as though stirred by unseen hands. The footsteps ceased, leaving Jack alone in the vast expanse. The silence was deafening, broken only by the distant howl of the wind. A flicker of movement caught Jack's attention. A shadowy figure at the far end of the ballroom. He strained his eyes to see, but the darkness clung to the intruder. "Who's there?" Jack demanded, his voice echoing through the cavernous space. The figure remained elusive, weaving through the shadows like a ghost. Jack pursued, his flashlight cutting through the darkness as he navigated the intricate patterns of the ballroom floor. The air grew colder, and whispers began to seep into Jack's ears, unintelligible voices that sent shivers down his spine. Suddenly, the figure materialized before him, a spectral woman in a tattered gown, her eyes hollow, void staring into Jack's soul. The air became thick with an otherworldly energy as she raised her ethereal hand, beckoning him closer. Unable to resist, Jack approached, the cold sweat on his brow contrasting with the freezing air. The ghostly figure spoke, her voice a haunting melody that seemed to reverberate through the very walls of the manor. "You cannot escape what lurks in the shadows," she whispered, her words etched into Jack's consciousness. The grand chandeliers above flickered violently, casting erratic shadows that danced around the room. The temperature plummeted, and Jack felt an invisible force constricting his chest. Panic set in as he realized the truth. The Hawthorne Manor was not just haunted. It was a vessel for the restless spirits trapped within. Desperation gripped Jack as he stumbled backward, the ghostly figure advancing with every step. He fumbled for his radio, but the once familiar crackle had transformed into an otherworldly chorus of voices that echoed the suffering of those long departed. The very fabric of reality seemed to warp around him as the ballroom became a maelstrom of spiritual energy. In his frantic attempt to escape, Jack stumbled upon a hidden staircase leading to the manor's forgotten depths. With the ghostly apparition in pursuit, he descended into a subterranean labyrinth of forgotten chambers and forgotten memories. The air grew stifling, and the weight of the past pressed upon him like a suffocating shroud. Each corridor seemed to converge on a single chamber, a room bathed in an eerie, ethereal light. The ghostly figure finally cornered Jack, her voice resonating with a mixture of sorrow and malevolence. "You cannot leave until you bear witness to the sins of the past," she intoned, her spectral form pulsating with an otherworldly energy. As if on cue, the walls of the chamber shimmered, revealing scenes from the bygone era of the manor's glory. Jack witnessed the tragic tales of lost love, betrayal, and despair that had unfolded within the grand walls of Hawthorne Manor. The spirits of the past materialized, enacting their woeful narratives before his horrified eyes. As the spectral drama unfolded, Jack felt an empathic connection to the tormented souls. Their anguish, their unfulfilled yearnings, became his own. He was an unwilling spectator to a macabre play that transcended time and space, a witness to the shadows that clung to the haunted legacy of the Hawthorne family. The grand finale of the spectral drama revealed the tragic fate of the ghostly figure. A woman named Alara Hawthorne, betrayed and abandoned by the ones she loved. The manor itself had become a prison for her restless spirit, seeking solace in the company of lost souls. Jack, now intertwined with the haunting history of the manor, understood the depth of the darkness that pervaded its every corner. With the revelation came a surge of energy, propelling Jack back into the present. The ghostly figure, no longer menacing, stared at him with hollow eyes filled with gratitude. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, and the echoes of the past dissipated into the silence of the abandoned manor. As the first light of dawn broke through the decaying windows, Jack found himself alone in the ballroom. The grand chandeliers hung still, and the air felt calm once more. He emerged from the labyrinthine depths, haunted by the memories of the night. The rumors of the Hawthorne Manor's haunting were not mere superstitions, but the remnants of a tragic history etched into the very fabric of the building. Jack, forever changed by the chilling night shift, left the manor with a newfound reverence for the thin veil that separates the living from the dead. The shadows of the night had revealed their secrets, leaving an indelible mark on the once skeptical security guard who had dared to venture into the heart of Hawthorne Manor. The night settled like a heavy cloak over the abandoned industrial complex, its skeletal structures looming in the moonlight. Joseph Harris, a seasoned security guard, reluctantly assumed his post at the entrance gate. The eerie silence was only punctuated by the distant hum of machinery that had long since been silenced. Little did Joseph know that this night would test his skepticism and redefine his understanding of the unknown. As the clock struck midnight, Joseph's talkie crackled to life, its harsh static breaking the silence. He glanced around, half expecting to see another guard nearby, but the complex stood desolate. Hesitant, he picked up the radio. "Hello," he spoke into the void. The response came as a distorted whisper, barely audible. "Joseph, help me." A chill raced down his spine as he recognized the voice. It was his colleague, David, who had disappeared without a trace a year ago, rationalizing it as a prank or interference. Joseph shook off the unease and called out, "Who is this? What do you want?" The only response was the low hum of the wind. Joseph's skepticism wavered, but duty prevailed. He continued his rounds, the occasional flicker of his flashlight revealing the industrial wasteland that stretched before him. As he approached the dilapidated warehouse, a distant clang echoed through the night. Joseph tightened his grip on his flashlight, scanning the darkness. Shadows seemed to dance on the periphery of his vision, flickering in and out of existence. He dismissed it as his imagination playing tricks in the dim light. The warehouse door groaned, creaking open on its rusted hinges. Joseph hesitated, hand on his radio. "Is anyone there?" he called out, the words hanging in the still air. No response came, only the haunting echo of his own voice bouncing off the cavernous walls. Against his better judgment, Joseph entered the warehouse, the darkness swallowing him whole. The only sound was the echo of his footsteps on the cold concrete floor. He swept his flashlight across the vast space, revealing rows of forgotten machinery draped in dusty tarps. The temperature dropped, and Joseph's breath formed small clouds in the frigid air. A distant voice, barely audible, whispered his name. "Joseph, over here." He followed the ethereal voice, navigating through the labyrinth of forgotten industry. The sound led him to a corner where an old metal door stood ajar. The feeble light of his flashlight flickered as he cautiously pushed the door open. Inside, the room was filled with the musty scent of decay. Broken machinery lay scattered like remnants of a forgotten era. A figure, shrouded in darkness, stood at the far end. "David," Joseph called, his voice trembling. The figure remained silent, its form elusive. Joseph's heart pounded in his chest as he approached, the flashlight casting an eerie glow on the abandoned machines. As he drew closer, the figure turned, revealing a face that mirrored David's, yet distorted by an otherworldly grief. "You left me here, Joseph." The apparition spoke, its voice a haunting blend of accusation and sorrow. Alone in the darkness, the room seemed to close in on Joseph as the apparition recounted the night. David vanished. Guilt gnawed at him, and the weight of responsibility pressed down on his shoulders. He had assumed David had abandoned his post, never considering the possibility that something sinister lurked within the abandoned complex. As the ghostly narrative unfolded, shadows danced on the walls, manifesting scenes from that fateful night. An unseen force compelled Joseph to witness the spectral reenactment of David's disappearance, a shadowy figure emerging from the darkness, dragging his colleague into the void. The room resonated with a mournful melody, the echoes of a forgotten tragedy. Joseph, paralyzed by the spectral revelation, could feel the lingering anguish that permeated the air. The ghostly figure turned to him, eyes pleading for understanding. "You have to set me free, Joseph. Find the truth." With those words, the apparition faded into the darkness, leaving Joseph alone in the desolate room. The weight of guilt and the chilling realization that something malevolent lingered in the shadows settled on him like a heavy shroud. Determined to uncover the truth, Joseph retraced his steps through the abandoned complex. The spectral whispers persisted, guiding him to forgotten corners and hidden passages. The temperature continued to drop, and an unnatural stillness clung to the air. In a secluded office, hidden behind layers of dust and neglect, Joseph discovered an old logbook. The pages revealed a dark underbelly of the industrial complex, clandestine experiments, unethical practices, and the exploitation of its workforce. David, in his quest for justice, had stumbled upon the sinister secrets that the shadows concealed. As Joseph delved deeper into the logbook, a presence manifested in the room. The temperature plummeted, and the ethereal whispers grew louder. Shadows converged, coalescing into a spectral figure that materialized before him, the embodiment of the complex's tortured history. The ghostly entity spoke, its voice echoing through the office. "You hold the key, Joseph. Expose the darkness that festers in this forsaken place." Compelled by a newfound purpose, Joseph vowed to bring the truth to light. Armed with the logbook, he ventured into the heart of the complex, navigating through the shadows that clung to the walls like sentient beings. As he reached the central control room, the air thickened with an oppressive energy. The shadows writhed, forming grotesque shapes that whispered malevolent secrets. Joseph, undeterred, confronted the control panel, determined to uncover the extent of the complex's dark history. The flickering lights illuminated the room, casting an eerie glow on the control panel. As Joseph sifted through the data, he uncovered a series of experiments that defied ethical boundaries, a desperate attempt to harness otherworldly forces for unimaginable power. The realization hit him like a sledgehammer. The shadows that haunted the complex were the remnants of tortured souls, trapped between realms by the malevolent experiments. The complex had become a nexus of supernatural anguish, a purgatory for those who had suffered within its walls. As Joseph absorbed the revelation, the control room echoed with anguished wails and spectral apparitions. The very fabric of reality seemed to unravel as the tortured souls yearned for release. Joseph, now a reluctant custodian of the complex's dark secrets, knew he had to act. Armed with the truth, Joseph retraced his steps, navigating the labyrinth of shadows that now seemed to part for him. The whispers became urgent, guiding him to the heart of the complex, a forgotten chamber where the experiments had reached their horrifying climax. Chamber, cloaked in an unnatural darkness, seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. Joseph hesitated at the threshold, the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders. The whispers grew into a cacophony of voices, urging him to break the cycle and release the trapped souls. With a deep breath, Joseph stepped into the chamber. The air crackled with supernatural energy as he confronted the epicenter of the complex's dark legacy. Shadows coalesced, forming a vortex that spiraled into the depths of the unknown. Summoning his courage, Joseph raised the logbook like a talisman. The pages fluttered, revealing the forgotten names and faces of those who had suffered. The spectral apparitions converged. Their collective energy focused on the makeshift conduit. In a burst of blinding light, the vortex collapsed, dissipating the malevolent force that had bound the tortured souls. A profound stillness settled over the complex as the shadows receded, leaving behind a profound sense of closure. The ghostly whispers ceased, replaced by a haunting silence. Joseph, drained but liberated, emerged from the chamber into the quiet night. The skeletal structures of the industrial complex stood as silent witnesses to the events that had unfolded within their walls. As dawn approached, Joseph surveyed the now serene complex, its haunted past laid bare. The weight of guilt had been replaced by a solemn resolution to ensure that the dark secrets of the abandoned industrial complex would never again ensnare the living or the departed. The sun cast its first rays over the horizon, dispelling the remnants of the night's chilling revelations. Joseph, forever changed by the spectral ordeal, left the complex behind, haunted by the echoes of the past, but carrying with him the knowledge that he had confronted the shadows and emerged from the darkness into the light of a new day.